Hello again. I just wanted to have a look at some inconsistent rhetoric from Donald Trump. Thought it would be quite good fun. Um, if you look at Greenland, he's one of his leading narrative lines is he doesn't want Russia and China to take it. He doesn't want Russia and China as a neighbor, and so on and so forth. Now, there's a few interesting things there. One, to my knowledge, neither Russia or China have ever suggested that they have ambitions to seize Greenland. Only he has done so as American president twice in his two terms. The other is if you take out your maps and your phones and you swing over to Alaska and then the Bering Sea, you will already you'll see that Russia is already a close neighbor of the United States. And then you start to realize that you know, the narrative is really a pretext. Yes, Greenland's a vast territory, and you could argue is strategically well placed, but it's also rich in oils and rare earths and so on and so forth, which is the main motivation of Trump. And I guess he would like to also put some huge naval bases and military facilities there as well. Um, it it also, I mean, there's often double meaning rhetoric now. You've seen with the Maduro situation. I don't suggest Maduro was a good president. Don't think he particularly was at all. But international law does prevent countries from swinging into other countries' capitals and kidnapping their presidents. It's a blatant breach of international law. So, international man of straw, Starmer, scurried away to avoid answering that question by repeating a narrative of what happened rather than whether it was a breach of international law or not. So the US is obviously keen to break international, ignore international law when it suits them. But if you look at another aspect, when they impose sanctions, which are a US move, they expect those to be adhered to the very letter. You can see with the seizure of oil tankers and so on and so forth. So when they are making their own version of law in sanctions, which is an act of themselves that aren't internationally applied, internationally instituted, sorry, but they want them to be applied everywhere, and they will be adhered um, to the letter because they have an economic interest in it. Which, if you look at the expansionism that's happening, um, and you focus now on countries, not territories, um, there's a standard pattern that's happening. You know, countries of interest are all resource rich or strategically well placed. And in the case of many, the process is to economically strangle them and then try to destabilize them from within, and then try to either finish them off with some military action, depending on the circumstances in the country, or just try to further stoke the unrest and then they fall. It's a little bit different in the past because there isn't really the ambition to put troops in large numbers in these countries. The approach seems to be, I know Greenland's a little bit different because he's talking about seizing that one, but that's a dependency. But in other countries, he's trying to remove regimes or destabilize regimes and put in place Western friendly leaders or do deals with standing leaders, which will facilitate the access to their resources. Um, so it's a little bit different than imperialism that you've seen in the past, where that has led to military presence. I think the US knows that it's quite stretched, so it's trying to do it, strangle the country economically, destabilize it from within, and then try to see a transition which leads to somebody who's amenable to US access to that particular country's resource. So it kind of got me thinking. I'm not a Marxist or a Leninist, but one of Lenin's notable pieces of work is here. It's Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. It was written in a slightly different context because it was talking more about sort of the 19th century into the early 20th century. Um, but it's almost a modern adaptation of that in terms of now it, imperialism is about access to resources, um, and sort of economic subjugation of other countries to be able to do that, to be able to, as I said, economically strangle them, help sort of stir up unrest from within, and then hopefully achieve that regime change, leadership change, and facilitate somebody who is more amenable to the exploitation of the resources of those countries, and often using highly um, duplicitous language that, if these actions were carried out by or led by countries like Russia and China, it would be seen as outrage and aggression and dictatorial and so on and so forth. Not saying that I support all the actions of those countries at all. I look at countries objectively, and politicians objectively don't support any of them. Just look at them objectively. Anyway, that's the things to look out for. I guess we'll see more of this economic strangulation, and then social unrest. Try to orchestrate regime change to access resources for Western countries, Western companies. As for Greenland, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I guess they will try to go for a compromise where the Europeans will say, well, let's kind of do it kind of together, NATO, and we'll let America have their role in Greenland as well. I guess that's a compromise I'll use. Um, whilst it's kind of nice to suggest that the population of Greenland will make its own determination, what it wants to do. Um, it's sort of hard to see how that'll happen because a vast territory with a population of just over 50,000 isn't really sustainable, in the sense that if they were fully independent, they would have to be supported by somebody, because how would they fund necessary infrastructure projects and so on and so forth? They would have to do that by mortgaging access to land or resources, which effectively would achieve the same reverse colonialization or imperialism, if you like. So, but I imagine the Europeans will try to buckle and say, right, well, we understand that this is a risk of infiltration from Russia and China, even though there's no evidence really of that. And they'll say, well, let's come in and do it all together, the Americans and the Europeans, and we can safeguard Greenland that way. But whether that's enough to buy off Trump and his greed, we'll have to see. That's it for now. Take care. Bye.